You are listening to Living with ADHD and CPTSD, available on all podcast platforms everywhere. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Living with ADHD and CPTSD. Today, we are going to talk about ADHD, and the specific topic for this episode is routines. Now, as I'm sure many of you are aware of, we, for the most part, with ADHD, in order to have our lives work in a successful way and feel comfortable with ourselves, is to have a set of routines that we have built into our lives. Many of them designed and created and developed over the years to the point where they are perfected and they work great for us. I know that for many, many years, even long before I ever discovered or realized that I had ADHD, had routines set into my life every day and for multiple things. The biggest one that routine, for myself, for my routines, was work related. I remember back in the day, I think it was pretty instinctive. I didn't really think about it at first, but I always used routines to make sure that I remembered everything to take with me when I would go to work. I had an important job in the city and I needed to get out the door on time so that I could get to work just before my scheduled shift started. And so the things that I needed to have with me were my packed lunch, my security card that I would use to scan to get into the building. I would have to have my keys, my wallet, my jacket, my computer, basically everything that was necessary, and also be able to get out of the door as quickly as possible instead of getting to the door, putting your shoes on, and then realizing, I forgot something. You go into the car and you turn it on, and you might remember right away, or you might remember while you're driving down the road, a minute or 5 minutes later, that you forgot something that's very important that you're going to need in order to make sure your job is successful. And that, let's say you forget your lunch. Well, you got to have something to eat, right? And unless you're willing to go to the store or the restaurant that's close by and buy food for the day, you're going to need your lunch. And the biggest thing that I always had a problem with is that I would be so rushed to go out the door that I would forget my security key to get back or to get into the building that I worked at. And there had been a number of times where I would be getting out the door, I'd get my wallet, check, I'd have my keys, I'd get in the car, I'd take off, and I would literally be going around the bridge onto the road, seeing the city about 20 minutes away, and then my brain would kick in and I'd be patting myself going, what did I forget? And of course I didn't necessarily remember right away, but all of a sudden I'd go, damn it, I forgot my card. How am I going to get into the building? So of course you're panicking and you're thinking, oh crap, I'm going to be late to get to work. And so you quickly turn around. I would get off to the side of the road and there'd be a turn if I was fortunate enough to get right onto the highway to go back to the house. And I would turn as quick as I can, get back onto the road, speed up. I think I sometimes would even be speeding a little bit, and I'd be feeling really anxious, really feeling like I'm wasting time and getting all upset because, oh great, I forgot my card at home. How am I going to get home? How am I going to get into work? And feeling stupid and getting mad at myself and feeling guilty and feeling shame and almost to the point where you kind of want to hit yourself, right? You go, oh, you stupid idiot. How could you do this? What a moron I am. I would literally say these things as I'm driving back home. And then I would rush into the house, open the door, get my, search for the card, go, where is it? Where is it? Where is it? Sometimes I remember I couldn't find it. And I'm going, where the heck is it? And then I'm like, oh, right, it's over there. And so I'd go grab it, and then I'd rush out back to the car and drive, and by the time I get to work, the feeling, that guilty feeling or that stupid feeling that would get into my brain would be gone, but I would still feel the effects, like the anxiety and the stress that would build up in my brain and that would be physically felt would still be there for a little while. So I knew from a very early age when I got out of high school that I needed to have designed routines, a routine to go to work. I needed a routine to remember things when I'd go out the door just to go some other location. If I were doing something around the house, it might not be as drastic as remembering everything to get out the door to go to work, but there were still things that I would do in a routine-based way or manner. And I know that I'm sure a lot of you out there who are suffering from ADHD and have been, dealing with this complication for a very long time, just how important it is to have routines in your life in order to reduce the stress and to feel in your own mind that you are being successful and that you are happy and that you feel good about yourself and that you avoid, really important problems or avoid it, and going to work on a daily basis and making sure that you remember everything is really important, because otherwise you're gonna, you repeatedly feel stress every day, and nobody wants that. I know I sure didn't, because whenever I would get out, first off, the problem that I had is that I always felt like I didn't have enough time. And that is a double whammy when it comes to ADHD, because as I'm sure a lot of you are aware of and have experienced numerous times throughout your life, especially when you're trying to get to work and get out the door on time so that you're not rushing, is it never really seems like you have enough time. You always feel like you're running out of time, that you're going to be late, that you can't get everything done, especially if you do things like make your lunch in the morning, make a coffee in the morning, sit down, try to relax, try to breathe so that you don't think about work all the time. And you end up always feeling like you never really have enough time, even though that's the furthest from the truth. I have so many different experiences when it comes to making sure that I am out on the road to go to work every day on time so I can get to work before my shift started. And it didn't always work, and mostly it was because I had a very difficult time keeping track of how much time I had left, right? So for example, I had to go to work for an 8 o'clock shift in the morning, and being about 30 minutes away from the office, I needed a specific amount of time scheduled from the time I got up to the time I went out the door in order to be efficient in getting out the door on time and not feeling stressed. So I would wake up, I think I remember scheduling it for about 6:25 a.m. in the morning, and waking up and not exactly being someone who gets up easy. I would probably spend a couple minutes in bed, waking up properly, feeling focused, or being able to, to realize that it's time to get up. And then once I would get up, I was kind of on the go the whole time, right? I'd get up, I'd go to the washroom, I'd go downstairs, I would make breakfast, I'd have a coffee, I would like sit down, and sometimes I would turn the TV on and watch a program. Sometimes I would just sit at the table and eat, go as fast as I can. And then as soon as I got out the door, I would, make sure that I've got my card, I've got my wallet, I've got my keys, I've got my coat, I've got my computer, I've got everything that I need. Oh, there, see, just look at that. I forgot my lunch. And so I would remember to grab my lunch and put it in the car and then take off. I always had a hard time changing the way I did things because, as we all know, nobody really does a good job when it comes to adjusting your routine. It's very difficult for people who suffer from ADHD to adjust their routine without having multiple problems come about due to the change. Now, for some, it might be easy, but for a lot of us who are in the ADHD world and are not neurotypical, we have a very difficult time. And when I come back, we're going to discuss about when I moved. I have moved a couple times, and I most recently moved this year, and I'm going to talk about the struggles that I had, and for a lot of it that I am still struggling with. So come back and join me for the next part of this episode, and we'll continue on talking about routines with ADHD. Welcome back, everybody, to Living with ADHD and CPTSD. Today we are talking about routines. This is an ADHD episode, and I would like to go further into the struggles that I have had with routines and having to create new ones. As I said earlier in the episode, I moved back on the 28th of June of this year. And not only did I move into the city, which is a very first and new thing for me, I also moved in with my girlfriend, who I have known for nearly 3 years. And basically, imagine, if you can, and I'm sure a lot of you can imagine this, living by yourself for as long as I have. I moved into my old place back in January of 2014, and I did have a few roommates, but they were basically just roommates. And then for about 3 years, I did not have anybody living with me. And so by myself, I had a routine set. I made dinner at a certain time. I got up during a certain time during the weekends. I had a specific bedtime frame, and I always went shopping on a certain day to get food. I would clean on a certain day of the week. I would watch TV in the room. I had a specific chair that I would sit in. Everything was basically built around a routine that I felt was the most comfortable thing for me. And unfortunately, when you move, especially when you're moving in with someone and you live with a person that you care and love about for the first time in your life, for anybody, a neurotypical, it is an adjustment. I'm not saying that neurotypicals don't have difficulties or struggles when it comes to moving in with someone, but it doesn't affect their life as hard as it does for someone like myself who has ADHD. Now, when I moved in, there were a lot of little things and a few big problems too that would come up on a daily basis. But I remember one of the first things that I had a problem with when I moved in, it was remembering where things were put, especially in the kitchen. Pots, pans, glasses, tea material, coffee things, spices, grains, where things were in the fridge. There were so many different shelves and cupboard, locations and drawers to put things that I had a very difficult time remembering. Like most people, when they move in, they kind of have an idea when they get in there where things are going to go, and then when they put them there, yeah, it might take them one or two times to remember where things are, and then you just figure it out and you move forward. But because of my ADHD, it was way worse. Like it was pretty bad. I think it probably was 6, 7, maybe 8 times where I would literally come into the kitchen and I had no idea where something was. And I'd be looking everywhere and I would get anxious and I would start to panic, and the level of stress would rise in my system. And she would say, "It's over here," or "It's in that drawer," and I'd be like, going, "Oh geez, thanks, okay, sorry," and getting all distraught and feeling silly and guilty, or feeling kind of dumb because I forgot. And then the next day I would literally forget again. It didn't matter. It was like I couldn't remember. And it was so hard on me and so stressful that I would literally have like triggers. Like I'm not talking about CPTSD here, but I would get triggered. And it would be really bad because I would feel so horrible and I'd feel so stupid that I'm forgetting again and again, day after day, where something as simple as the pans were, or the spatula, or the tea would be up here, and I couldn't remember, and that was one of the easier ones, because eventually I did remember. And today, 99% of the time when I go into the kitchen, I know where everything is. There is the odd time where I have to, I open the wrong drawer and I go, "Oh, it's not in here," and then right away I'd go, "Oh, that's right, it's in this drawer," and so I would find it there. That was one of the easier ones. Now, some of the harder ones are like totally having your like routines completely scrapped, right? Like I said earlier in this episode, that I had a routine for when I got up, when I made breakfast, when I would make dinner, when I'd go shopping, when I'd watch TV, where I'd sit, all these things, like what time of day I would take the dog out to go walking, little things that I would do that made my life comfortable and easy to manage. So there were a number of things that changed, and it was really, to be simple and frank, it was really tough. And the level of stress and the anxiety that all these new things, like multiple new things that were being introduced into my life, was extremely difficult to handle. And it arose so many different feelings. I'm not exactly great when it comes to expressing how I feel and expressing my thoughts, especially in putting it into words. I'm really bad at that. And I just remember like having to wake up and not have the day to yourself. Having to think for more than just one person, right? Like I had to think about what I was doing. I had to think about what my girlfriend's plans were. I had to make sure I was looking out for the 2 cats that I have never lived with before. It was just a dog up till that point. And then it was things like having to always think about what our dinner plans were. My lunch was completely different. not being able to make breakfast at 7:30, 8 in the morning like I always had in the past. Today, my breakfast sometimes turns into my lunch. I don't always have breakfast at the same time of day. And unknown to me, like these unknowns are very difficult to handle because it takes a very long time. And it did take a long time for me. I can't honestly remember how long it took for my system to get used to the idea that I didn't know when I would be able to eat, because I remember how many times I'd get up at 7:30 and I would make my coffee, and I would be too scared to make any serious noise because I didn't want to wake her up. She doesn't get up at the same time as I do. And so it would, like a lot of wondering and a lot of being over concerned about how you do your thing day by day. Um, like I tend to, back in the day when I first moved in, my routine was to make a smoothie in the morning for breakfast. On the weekend, I would make eggs. Um, I would do, like, the one thing that I have set a routine is in the morning I will do the dishes. Like I will about 8:30 I will sit, go and organize the dishwasher, put everything in the dishwasher and get it running. That was one new routine that is built in. It was kind of easy to do because I enjoy doing these kind of things. I wouldn't exactly call myself a clean freak or someone who's super anal when it comes to having cleanliness and all that, but I do enjoy having a clean kitchen and having a clean living room and a clean house. And so I enjoyed creating this new routine. But when you've lived such a long time with an old routine that is very important to you, changing it and learning how to readjust your life to this new routine, especially when it isn't exactly something that you like doing, the amount of stress and the level of anxiety that you feel, like that I felt, was incredible. It was really hard, and it it did create some feelings of doubt and some, second guessing myself, wondering if this was the right thing to do, if I made a mistake, if it was too soon. And the worst part, when you look back on it, was how it affected my relationship. And you got to remember, I've never lived with another person, especially a woman who is my girlfriend, on a daily basis. Like, at the most, before we moved in, I would see her 2, 3 times a week during the weekend. And the first night I'd go to her place, and then the second night she'd come to my place, and then on Sunday, and it wasn't guaranteed, it wasn't always the case, but on Sundays I would either stay at her place, or I'd take her home and we'd hang out for a bit, and then I would go home. So being together 24/7, like, again and again and again, on its own, is a very difficult and new experience. And for someone who has ADHD like myself, it can be very stressful and very hectic, and it can create a lot of emotions. And the level of frustration that I felt, and wondering if, what the hell am I doing, was very often occurring again and again. And it it's now October, and so we have lived together now for 4 months, and there hasn't been a single day that we haven't been in the same house at the end of the night. And funny enough, when you think about it, there is a new routine, and it's a bit broader when it comes to what I'm doing, and having to remember all the time that the activities and the things that I do during the day are affecting multiple people, and the levels of decisions that I make, it affects so many little different things. Like, I have to be wary of the fact that I have to, during the week, because my girlfriend has a music studio in the house down in the basement. I can't just turn the TV on and turn it up to a good volume and watch a movie and have surround sound going and the bass roaring, and I can't bounce around and stomp all over the floor and be loud. I have to be very respectful of what I'm doing in order to make sure that it doesn't disturb her business, because this is her livelihood. Like, what happens in the house can affect her business. I wouldn't want to do something that could be detrimental to her ability to make money and earn a living. Like, I do work at home for the most part, but it isn't like I'm not seeing clients at the house, right? Like, she sees her clients all the time at our house, and I go out to see my clients. So learning how to be aware of my surroundings and be aware of like the volume that I'm at, knowing when it's appropriate to do things, knowing the right door to go out, remembering to make sure the dog is in the house before the audience, like before her students come in every day, is huge. And you've got to, like, there's so many little things to remember. So there's a brand new routine for everything. It's pretty tough. Okay, so I'm going to take a break here, and then when I come back, I will go deeper into how the routines and the change in my life and the new routines that I'm building, how it affects my relationship and some of the struggles that I've had since I've moved in here. Okay, talk to you soon. All right, I'm back, and we're talking about routines in ADHD. So I'm going to get back into this right away. Having a relationship is obviously one of the more difficult things that any man or woman would ever have to deal with or, experience in a life. And I think the only things that would probably be bigger than that are marriage, having a child or children, and having to deal with a loved one dying. Those are all very drastic things. And I remember now that a couple people have told me that moving and living with someone is a very drastic change and is a big effect on people. And I never really thought of it that way until a couple of people told me that. And it did, to some degree, make me feel better. But a relationship, when you're living in a house with someone who's, sharing rent, sharing utilities, you're sharing the cost of buying food and other expenses, it really quickly emphasizes to you just how much of a deal this is, right? It's not as simple as just saying, well, it doesn't work, goodbye. This isn't something that you take lightly. And I know that, and she knows that, of course, and I'm sure most of you out there wouldn't take really any sort of effort to understand the severity of what changes occur when you start living with someone, especially someone of this importance that could be very likely long term or for the rest of your life. So the having to live with ADHD with someone who is not an ADHD person, or as we like to call them, a neurotypical, it's very complex and can be very stressful on both people. And I know from a personal experience that it is very difficult. I'm not exactly someone who could say that the transition from living by myself to living with another person, especially a loved one, was easy. It's far from it. And the routines that were in place for, I think for myself, was about 7 or 8 years, were suddenly and drastically altered. And some of them don't exist anymore. Like, I still have like routines like remembering to put my wallet and my keys and my phone in a certain location for each morning, remembering where my computer is, remembering to, wear certain types of clothing, remember where my belt is, remember where my work jacket is, and make sure I've got all my cards and identification, and then remembering where my shoes are. Like, being, not only remembering everything, but being efficient at the same time. Because you can struggle at remembering all the stuff that you need to go to work. But unless you're very good at it, it for most people, when they go out the door, they already know where everything is. So they grab their wallet, they grab their keys, they grab their phone. There might be something they need to take with them, such as maybe like a package or an item that they have to return, or a list. And it can take them a few minutes just to get everything get out the door. And that's besides changing and putting on makeup or having a shower and brushing your teeth and doing things to make yourself look right and proper to be out in public. So never mind about that. But remembering to do all these things for an ADHD person who doesn't have a very good routine in place, it can take a long time. You could probably have 3 times the amount of time wasted trying to get out the door without having to turn around multiple times to remember to get your keys, or to get your wallet, or you forget your phone. I've forgotten my phone. I get out the door and I forgot to take my personal phone, because like I have 2 phones that I have to take with me. I've got my personal phone and I've got my work phone. And I need them both. You can't go to work without communication, devices. So that wasn't very suitable. And the worst thing that you could forget would be identification cards, because especially if you needed to get into the building, you don't have it unless there's someone who's coming at the same time, or you're good friends with people at work. It's extremely difficult to be able to manage your daily life successfully if you don't have everything you need. So anyways, my relationship that I'm getting near to 3 years with my girlfriend. We have gone through so much together. Like, first, I think it was 2.5 years nearly, not living together and dealing with all the different things, like the diagnosis that I had ADHD, learning that I had CPTSD, and then having to figure out things, learn all the different techniques and learn new tricks and get better at doing the right steps so that life could be easier. Excuse me. And now, like I said, moving in together, it drastically changes everything. So it's no longer 3 days a week, not even 24 hours necessarily a day, to going to 24 hours, 7 days a week, having to make food for each other at the same, like I do dinner 2 or 3 nights a week. She does her dinner a couple nights a week as well. We make a stew. We sometimes, like, once a week, sometimes we'll order like Vietnamese food, which in my opinion is a simple way to deal with that, making dinner. But we all, my lack of routine ability, and the fact that it changes so drastically and everything adjusted, like the craziness and the stress that not having the ability to do your routines anymore, I wasn't fully understanding and realizing just how much stress and frustration that I was putting onto my girlfriend. I thought I was having issues. The amount of stress that she was dealing with and craziness was just as bad, if not worse. And she's, it's not exactly easy for her. She has her own quirks that affect her life along with mine. So imagine having two different people with two unique sets of quirks and things or issues that we both deal with on a daily basis having to get along. And it's been a very difficult, strenuous, and long-term test for our relationship. And Eve, barely basically 4 months into this I guess you would call it new exploration or new venture. There we go. The word is venture. Together in this house has been very adventurous and very hectic, stressful, a lot of frustration, a lot of stress, anxiety on my behalf. There's some on hers. I felt horrible multiple times. I felt like I couldn't do anything right. I was doubting myself. There was worried that I was going to ruin this relationship, that I was going to ruin our lives. I was also scared to make my voice heard and express my opinions on things because I was so scared of doing something wrong. And with ADHD, because someday I'll go into this further, but ADHD people to avoid conflict or to avoid making it worse, try to be very accommodating to people. And they'll do whatever they can. Like they'll do things that they wouldn't normally do, or they'd be very helpful, or they would give in to, they wouldn't get their needs met. They would try to make sure that their partner's needs are met rather than their own. And I'll tell you right now, not meeting your own needs is not a good thing. You want to do that because you have to have a 50-50. You got to have time together and you got to have your time apart. And being together was probably the most stressful time of my life. And it's because I was so out of it. My routines were completely torn apart. I'm trying to build a new routine and it's a slow process. It wasn't easy to do, and it was taking its toll on her and on myself at the same time. And it does make you wonder. I really don't want to have to go through this again. I do realize that we'll probably at some point in the next few years or so decide to look at buying a house. There's a possibility of, getting engaged and getting married and then looking at having kids. So the thing that I had to learn, and I am still learning, is to expect the unexpected, right? Like if all you ever do day after day is live on routine alone, and you're unprepared for unexpected anomalies, like you're out of food or something breaks or you can't use your vehicle for a week because it's broken down, so you got to borrow her car. That can be stressful because you have to change your routine. You have to alter the way you do your life. And I'll be frank, living your life as a routine, day after day, doing the same thing again and again, can be good for a certain period of time or to a point. But you need to, and I have learned that I need to be better at managing the unexpected, being able to have variables, be willing to experience new things that you don't have the time to prepare for. Being perfect and making it work exactly the way you want it doesn't always work, and it just causes more stress than anything else. I would not recommend relying on routines as much as an ADHD person needs them. The best way to get better at not relying on it is to have another person in your life. It's not simple. I'm not saying that I say go out there and just change your life. Like get rid of everything, change everything. Like it might not be a bad idea when you think about it to maybe like start slow. Perhaps every month change up your routine. Maybe get up at a different time. Make your breakfast a different way. Go out and exercise at a different time of day in the morning, and then maybe the next month you can do it in the evening, or you can walk the dog at a different time each month, or you can just make drastic changes altogether. You could start a new hobby. You could, there's nothing wrong with that, right? Like it can be fun, and it's a good way to learn how to deal with unexpected changes and issues, good or bad, and not allow it to affect your ability to be happy, to be successful, to not have these anomalies that are against our routines to cause to the point where we can't function. Because the last thing I'm sure that any of us want is the inability to function, because our routines are so dead set that any wavering off the routine causes complete meltdown or shutdown of our system. I have had to deal with that quite often in the past while, and learning how to adapt and feel comfortable while adapting to these changes in your routine has really shown me the confidence and the ability that it can be done. It's not easy. It does take a lot of work, and you're going to have trial and errors, and you're going to fail sometimes, but you can't allow it to defeat you. You can't walk away saying, well, this didn't work, I'm never going to try that again. You have to get back up. You got to dust the dirt off of your arms, your legs, your pants, and smile and try to think positively and say, well, okay, it didn't go so well today, but tomorrow we'll try it again and it will go better, and I will, have a better time at it this time. I definitely suggest that trying new things is a good way to adjust and to make it easier, because routines can only last for so long. You can't go from being 18 years old to suddenly going to 75 doing the exact same thing every day for the rest of your life. You need to have change. You need to have fluctuations in order to enjoy life, to live it to the fullest. And these things happen. I don't know anybody who doesn't have the unexpected things or issues come up during life that get in the way. And the better you can handle these unexpected ordeals that come up, the less downtime that you'll have. And as we all know, in ADHD, there can be a lot of downtime. Like we have our hyperfocus, we have our daydreaming, we've got our lack of ability to focus, we've got our low frustration tolerance that makes us get angry real quickly. And we all have to work on these things. We have to, whether it's through getting help from a therapist or just experiencing new things and exposing yourself to the world, It all will help. It will make life easier and less reliant on routines. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not suggesting that we should stop having routines. It does make life feel comfortable, and on a bad day when maybe we're sick or we just are having a rough time for whatever reason, routines can definitely help, and it makes life feel more manageable. But we need to be able to wander off from routines, even if it's once in a while, to be happier, to feel more capable, to have a better chance at not having ADHD get in the way of being successful, at being happy, at doing the things that you want to do, and not struggling from fear and anxiety and letting it get in the way of succeeding in that plan. I personally, I recommend trying something new. I know I've said it already. Good old ADHD here. I think that's going to wrap up the episode for this one for Friday. If you have any recommendations or suggestions, or if you want to give me drop me a line or give me a good word, or maybe there's even a criticism or a critique that you have regarding the show, feel free to go to the website, www.livingwithadhdandcptsd.ca. You can contact us there. There's plenty of good resources that you can use if you're needing some assistance, help. Maybe you're trying to find an ADHD coach where you live. Plenty of resources there for you to look at. Okay, so I'm Russ, and this is Living with ADHD and CPTSD. And tomorrow there'll be an episode for CPTSD that people can enjoy. All right, until next week, talk to you all later. Bye.